Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You are welcome to the 35th lecture of this course. These days, we are discussing the measurement and scaling techniques, and in this context, today we shall be discussing the Likert scale in detail. In one of the previous lectures, when I was discussing the Likert scale, I did not do it in detail, just introduced it, because Likert scale is very popular in the research where the qualitative data has to be collected, and therefore the Likert scale has to be discussed in detail. And this is why today we shall be doing the same. The Likert scale is also called summated scale. These are developed by utilizing the item analysis approach, wherein a particular item is evaluated on the basis of how well it discriminates between those persons whose total score is high and those whose score is low. So, it is evaluated on the basis of the power of discrimination. How much discrimination, how much how much it distinguishes between those persons who with a total high and low scores. Those items or statements that meet this kind of discrimination test are included in the final instrument. So, it depends upon the discriminating power or for the items or statements that they have to be included or not included in the final instrument. So, we will be observing it in due course of this lecture. The summated scales consist of a number of statements which express either a favorable or unfavorable attitude toward the given object to which the respondent is asked to react. So, there is a respondent and we provide him some favorable and some unfavorable statements to respond. Now, the respondent is free to respond any of these statements. That is the way we do it. The statements are given about a phenomenon, and then these statements are to be responded by the respondent, whether it is favorable or unfavorable. That is his opinion that we are going to seek. In this Likert scale, each response is given a numerical score indicating its favorableness or unfavorableness. The scores are total to measure the respondent's attitude. So, we have the different statements, both favorable and unfavorable. We have both kinds of statements, but they are given numerical numbers, assigned numerical numbers. So, this overall score would represent the respondent's position on the continuum of the favorable unfavorableness towards an issue. There is a continuum of the statements from the one end to the other end, one extreme to the another extreme, and they have to, the respondent has to give his own, has to respond his opinion, and all these statements are accordingly given the numerical score. Most frequently used summated scales in the, these are called the summated scales, but as we come to know that the Likert scale is the most popular, most frequently used summated scales in the study of social attitudes that follow the pattern devised by Likert. And this is why we often refer to it as Likert type scales. So, Likert is a summated scale and it gives the favorable and unfavorable continuous statements, and then a score is provided to all the statements according to the respondents' responses to various statements. His overall score represents the respondent's position on the continuum of favorable unfavorableness towards an issue or a phenomena. In a Likert scale, the respondent is asked to respond to each of the statements in terms of several degrees, usually 5 degrees, but at times 3 or 7 may also be used of agreement or disagreement. So, we can have 7-point Likert scale, we can have 5-point Likert scale, we can have 3-point Likert scale. Of course, as large number of degrees are shown, as large number of the statements are given, because every statement gives the degree of agreement or disagreement, favorableness or unfavorableness. So, if there are a smaller number of the statements, then of course the choice is further limited. And if the statements are say 7, then of course the choice expands. But normally we find that there are 5 degrees involved, that is 5 statements given, and the respondent has to respond over it. So, it depends upon the kind of research that the researcher is pursuing to adopt, whether 3-point Likert, 5-point Likert or 7-point Likert, because it all depends upon the availability of the respondents, their understanding and various other things. So, but the normal is to go for a 5-point scale, Likert scale. So, giving an example, when asked to express opinion whether one considers his job quite pleasant, the respondent in any one of the following can respond in any one of the following ways. Number 1, strongly agree. Number 2, agree. Number 3, undecided. Number 4, disagree. Number 5, strongly disagree. This is the 5-point scale. If we can take another example, if the students of a department are asked to give their opinions whether the student considers the teaching as quite good, then the respondent may respond in any of these following ways. He may strongly agree, he may agree, he may remain undecided, he may remain disagree, he may remain strongly disagree. Or suppose we want customers of a restaurant and give them to seek their opinion, and we say seek the opinion whether one considers the food very tasty or not, then the respondent may respond in any one of the following ways which has been given. Or suppose if we say that your representative in assembly or the municipal corporation or the parliament has done a very good job in his 5-year tenure. So, the voter or the respondent may respond in any one of the following ways. That is, he may strongly agree with the opinion that the member of the assembly has done a very good job in his or her tenure. Or he may simply agree that yes, he has done a or she has done a good job. Or he says that I am undecided. Or he may disagree with this statement, or he may strongly disagree with the statement that the representative has done a good job in the 5 years of his tenure or her tenure. So, any of these opinions that he or she gives, the respondent gives a message which anybody can understand what does he or she means by it. So, what then it is done? We find that these 5 points constitute the scale. At one extreme of the scale, there is a strong agreement with the given statement, and at the other, a strong disagreement, and between them lie intermediate points. So, this is given here in the figure. In the extreme of the scale, we have a strong agreement, and in the end, we have a strongly disagreement. So, in between, we have agree, undecided and disagree, and the scores have been given accordingly. So, in a Likert scale, the respondent is asked to respond to each of the statements in terms of several degrees, usually 5 degrees, but at times 3 or 7 may also be used for the disagreement or agreement. For example, when we asked to express opinion whether he considers his job or she considers her job quite pleasant, the respondent may respond in any one of these following ways. That is, he or she can strongly agree or remain undecided or disagree or strongly disagree. So, we find these 5 points constituting the scale, and at the extreme strongly disagree, and then the strong agree. So, each point in the scale carries a score. Response indicating the least favorable degree of job satisfaction is given the least score, that is, say 1, and the most favorable is given the highest score, that is, say 5. The score values are normally not printed on the instrument but are shown here just to indicate the scoring pattern. The Likert scaling technique thus assigns a scale value to each of the 5 responses. The same thing is done in respect of each and every statement in the instrument. This way, instrument yields a total score for each respondent, which would then measure the respondent's favorableness towards the given point of view. So, here we find that if the instrument consists of 30 statements, the following score values would be revealing. Here, the 30 statements means 30 kind of ingredients of that phenomenon. So, if we are working on the job satisfaction, then regarding the job satisfaction, we have to have 30 statements, and all these statements would be measured on the Likert scale. It's not necessary to have always 30, but it could be 10 also, it could be 15 also, it could be 20 also, and it could be 30 also. So, suppose we are studying the level of satisfaction of students in the class, then we can always make, say, 10 statements regarding that. Is the teacher regular in the class? Does he come on time? Does he revises the course? Does he covers the course? Does he gives time for tutorials? Does he encourages question asking, that a student should ask the questions? Does he encourage it or she encourage it? So, say these 10 kind of statements we have devised, and then these all statements have to be given to a respondent, whether he strongly agrees or strongly disagrees with these statements. The teacher is regular in the class, the teacher comes on time, the teacher encourages questions, the teacher revises the syllabus every session, the teacher covers the whole of the syllabus. The teacher gives extra time to students. He takes tutorials. He encourages questions in the class by students. So these kind of statements are given to the students, say 15 questions or 10 questions, and they are given a scale of 1 to 5. That is, beginning from strongly agree to indifferent, or to disagree, or to strongly disagree with the statement. So, if the student says he agrees with the statement that teacher comes on time, then it means he has given 4 to the Likert score. And if to the statement that teachers always comes on time, the respondent, that is the student, takes the disagreement or strongly disagree, then it means he has given the least point to the Likert score about this statement. Or suppose if the statement or the question statement that the teacher encourages question asking by students in the class. So, a student can always say that I strongly agree. That is, he gives or she gives 5 score to the Likert scale for this statement. Or if he says, I just only agree with the statement that teacher encourages question asking by students in class. So, it means he has given just 4, a bit lower than the strongly agree. So, there is always a clear message, whether with the statement the respondent disagrees, agrees, indifferent, agrees, strongly agrees, whatever position he takes on the scale, it gives a message. And we have already given the various points on the scale according to the beginning from the most favorable response to the most unfavorable response. So, his score in the 10 parameters of the student satisfaction to the teachers, that is 10 statements that we had devised about them, about the satisfaction of students. This all will be summated, will be summed, and then his position would be declared. Where does the student stands in the satisfaction level of the teacher from the teaching in the class. So, suppose there are 10 questions and there is 5 scale. So, the maximum most favorable response possible is 50 and least is 10, because a strongly disagreement means 1 and a strong agreement means 5. So, the maximum would be possible would be the 50, because we have 10 statements regarding the satisfaction level of students from teaching in the class. Whereas the most a neutral attitude would be 30, where the students are unable to, decide which side to take the position, and the most unfavorable attitude would be where the scores from the respondent totals or sums at 10, because we had 10 statements, we had a scale of 1 to 5, 5 most favorable, 1 most unfavorable. So, the score would vary between 10 to 50, and wherever, if it is 50, it is most unfavorable. If is it is 30, then it is neutral attitude, and if it is say 50, then it is most favorable response possible for the satisfaction of studying, the satisfaction of students in the class. I give this example because regarding the student satisfaction from the teaching, because it is a very serious issue, and of course it would, I am sure it would become you more interesting in studying this kind of course. So where we, let us come back to the PPT, where we have the 30 statements. And so in these 30 statements, what could be the possibilities? The possibilities would be either 30 into 5 is equal to 150, most unfavorable response possible. 30 into 3 is equal to 90, a neutral attitude, and 30 into 1 is equal to 30, most unfavorable attitude. So here in this case, what we had done, in the case of a student satisfaction, we had taken only 10 statements regarding the student satisfaction profile, whereas in this phenomenon which we are discussing, we have 30 statements. Maybe regarding the satisfaction level from the parliamentary representative or any political representative, or about policy studies about a party, or about the governance, we can have such kind of large statements. So, if we have these 30 statements and the scale is Likert scale is 1 to 5, then of course the scores for any individual would fall between 30 and 150, and if the scores happens to be above 90, it shows favorable opinion, whereas the scores below 90 would mean unfavorable opinion, and a score of exactly 90 would be suggestive of a neutral attitude. So, I try to make you understand again. If suppose we have to study the level of satisfaction of students from teaching, okay, we devise 10 statements regarding that. Whether the teacher is regular, the teacher comes on time, the teacher does not talks only the topic, the teacher encourages questions by students, the teacher revises syllabus every year, the teacher completes the syllabus, the teacher gives extra times to a student, students. These kind of 10 statements we have devised to study the level of satisfaction of students from the teaching in a class. So, what we do? We have a 5-point scale and we give these 10 statements to a respondent, here an student. So, one student has to in fact respond to all these 10 statements. So, it is not necessary that the student would give same points in every statement. He may give say 4 to one statement and he may give 1 to another statement. He may give 3 to another statement. He may give 2 or she may give 2 to another statement. That way, what we find that to all these 10 questions, the students may give or may not give the same points, Likert points to the statements. So, what will be done? Here, if the position is, the status is that there are 10 statements and 5 is the maximum score. So, the most favorable response possible is 50 from the student, from one student, and then the most unfavorable attitude or opinion of the student should be 10. 10 is to 1. In every statement he has given 1, whereas 30 could be the neutral position. So, all the scores above 30 would lead to the position of satisfaction by teaching in the class, whereas a score below 30 would lead to the dissatisfaction of to conclude the dissatisfaction of students from the teaching in the class. I wish I have been able to clear the basic concept of the Likert scale. Now we proceed ahead. The procedure. The procedure for developing a Likert type scale is as follows. Number A, as a first step, the researcher collects a large number of statements which are relevant to the attitude being studied. And each of these statements expresses definite favorableness or unfavorableness to a particular point of view or the attitude, and that the number of favorable and unfavorable statement is approximately equal. Otherwise, we would have problem. After the statements have been gathered, a trial test should be administered to a number of subjects. In other words, a small group of people from those who are going to be studied finally are asked to indicate their response to each statement by checking one of the categories of agreement or disagreement using a 5-point scale as stated above. That is, doing the study on a small scale to study the viability of our scaling. Then the response to various statements are scored in such a way that a response indicative of most favorable attitude in a 5-point scale is given the highest score of 5, and that with the most unfavorable attitude it is given the lowest score, that is of 1. Then the total score of each respondent is obtained by adding his scores that he received for separate statements. The next step is to array these total scores and find out those statements which have a high discriminatory power. For this purpose, the researcher may select some part of the highest and lowest total scores, say the top 25% and the bottom 25%. These two extreme groups are interpreted to represent the most favorable and least favorable attitudes and are used as criterion groups by which to evaluate individual statements. This way, we determine which statements consistently correlate with low favorability and with which high favorability. So, this way we develop the statements and we develop the and we measure these scale. So, that is the way how to go for the Likert scale. Next let us discuss advantages. The Likert type scale has several advantages. Number one, it is relatively easy to construct the Likert type scale in comparison to Thurston type scale that we discussed in a previous lecture, and also because Likert type scale can be performed without a panel of judges. The Thurston type scale requires a panel of judges. Then the Likert type scale is considered more reliable because under it respondents answer each statement included in the instrument. As such, it also provides more information and data than does the Thurston type scale. Each statement included in the Likert type scale is given an empirical test for discriminating ability, and as such, unlike Thurston type scale, the Likert type scale permits the use of statements that are not manifestly related to have a direct relationship to the attitude being studied. The Likert type scale can easily be used in respondent-centered and stimulus-centered studies. That is, through it, we can study how responses differ between people and how responses differ between stimuli. Likert type scale takes much less time to construct. It is frequently used by the students of opinion research. Moreover, it has been reported in various research studies that there is high degree of correlation between Likert type scale and the Thurston type scale. So, this is why the Likert type scale is very popular in the research where the qualitative data has to be generated and qualitative analysis has to be done. So, this Likert type scale is very popular, very famous, and we can also try to practice, for any of our researches, if opinion research or any kind of such researches, we must use the Likert type scale. Then, but in spite of all those advantages, it's not that it does not have limitations. It has several limitations also. The one important limitation is that with this scale, we can simply examine whether respondents are more or less favorable to a topic, but we cannot tell how much more or less they are. There is no basis for belief that the 5 positions indicated on the scale are equally spaced. The interval between strongly agree and agree may not be equal to the interval between agree and undecided, and the interval between undecided and disagree may not be equal to the interval between disagree between the disagree and strongly disagree. So, the 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 scales are not equally spaced. It cannot be, because of course the it is not a quantity data. So, this means that Likert scale does not rise to a stature more than that of an ordinal scale. Whereas the designers of Thurstone scale claim the Thurstone scale to be an interval scale, as we had done by making some kind of adjustments in the values in the Thurstone scale that, that if you remember in the one of the previous lectures. However, it is their claim, how much it is successful, we can have this discussion in some other lecture, but here it is sure that the Likert scale concentrates it as an ordinal scale, because the spacing or the interval between the various positions in the Likert scale cannot be claimed to be similar or equal. Moreover, there remains always a possibility that people may answer according to what they think they should feel rather than how they do feel. This particular weakness of the Likert scale, type scale, is met by using a cumulative scale, which of course we shall be taking later in a lecture, which in some other lecture. In spite of all the limitations, the Likert type summated scales are regarded as the most useful in a situation wherein it is possible to compare respondents' score with a distribution of scores from some well-defined group. They are equally useful when we are concerned with program of change or improvement, in which case we can use the scales to measure attitudes before and after the program of change or improvement in order to assess whether our efforts have had the desired effects or not. Also, further, we can as well correlate scores on the scale to other measures without any concern for the absolute value of what is favorable and what is unfavorable. All these that we have discussed accounts for the popularity of Likert type scales in social studies relating to measuring of the attitudes, and this is how we find that in the in such kind of studies in where the attitudes and other kind of abstract concepts are being measured, the Likert scale is very useful and very popular. With this, I stop, and I think that let me think that you have understood the lecture very well. Thank you very much.